Oh, yo, D Wood and AP.
P.
Hey, this is interesting.
The scientific miracles argument in the Quran got debunked.
Did it now?
Yeah, I hope my tajweed was on point.
He even says his lovely pronunciation. I hope my tajweed was on point.
Yeah.
So he's making it pretty clear there.
Yeah.
So when I said this, a lot of Islamophobes were celebrating as if I was like, oh my gosh, like this video is going to be me apologizing. And no, listen, it got debunked. Now, let's give some context for some Muslims so they can understand. For example, and I'll tell you where this comes from. And you know why many people in the Duat, YouTubers, my colleagues, like brothers that I work with, didn't do a video. Why did you say that? Because they know it as well. In what sense?
So if I were to make a video saying, hey, Christian, just so you know, the Jesus resurrection has been debunked. Yeah, there's a bunch of nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. You'd be hearing from a lot of Christians real quick, like going, wait, what? What'd you just say? And they would strongly object to me saying that. And so Ali Dawa just made a very important point. He said, yeah, I said the argument's been debunked. How many of the Dawa guys you see coming after me saying, no, it hasn't? How many? How many? Zero? Yeah, because they all know I'm right.
I was debating with him, and I can remember this very clearly a couple of years ago. And I took an ayah in the Quran, which I am not qualified to do, which is it's like doing tafsir. So there was an ayah in the Quran which says that there are 7 heavens. So I was claiming, because of this whole scientific narrative, that this is talking about the ozone layer. Number one, it is haram for me to do that. Why? Because how can I give an understanding to the Quran, the ayah, with no qualifications? And who have ever said that this is the ozone layer? Then I was having a debate with this atheist guy and trying to tell him that there's 7 ozone layers. And he was saying to me, no, my friend, there are 6 ozone layers. And
All right. If you're talking to a guy who says there's 6 and you're saying there's 7, you both have no clue what you're talking about.
saying 7. He was saying 6, 7, 6, 7, 6. And we said, let's go to the NASA page. So we went to the NASA page, and in the NASA page, guess what? It said the argument was apparently from their recent findings, whatever it may be. This probably changed. And this is my whole point of the video, yeah? Science changes.
Yeah.
It said that there is 5 ozone layers.
Anyone find this NASA article saying there are 5 ozone layers? I'd be interested in seeing that. It's like he's explaining something that happened and can't even get that right. Oh well.
So I looked at him, he looked at me, and I was thinking, I'm saying 7, you're saying 6, NASA is saying 5. That is where the penny dropped for me. You know why?
That's where the penny dropped.
Because we are making claims about the Quran and specific verses, and because we was, not.
But by the way, I mean, notice, I mean, he's sitting here saying 7 ozone layers, clearly has no clue what he's talking about, but he was defending the scientific miracles argument. That's pretty much all you need to know about Dawa, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so we are looking at Joe Rogan interviewing Stephen Meyer. Stephen Meyer, I believe, is with the Discovery Institute. I have a couple of his books. Signature in the Cell, that's about biology, and then his more recent one is what's it called? The Return of the God Hypothesis. Let me see what his actual background is. Stephen Meyer is an American author, former educator, this is funny. He's an advocate of the pseudoscience of intelligent design and helped found the Center for Science and Culture of the Discovery Institute, which is the main organization behind the intelligent design movement. Graduated from Whitworth College, Richfield, blah, 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 blah. Scholarship from the Rotary Club of Dallas to study at Cambridge University. Earned the Master of Philosophy, Doctor of Philosophy in the History and Philosophy of Science. That's what I was looking for. Background is History and Philosophy of Science.
Just checked on the internet just to see what you're talking about. On Wikipedia, it actually says the pseudoscience of intelligent design. I didn't know that.
That's what I looked up. That's what I just looked up.
That's weird. I didn't think that is called pseudoscience on Wikipedia. What?
Yep. Well, now you know.
That's
weird. If you say you can detect signs of intelligent design, then it's pseudoscience, AP. Wikipedia says so. So now you know. That should be comforting to you.
that sounds a little bit argumentative and biased. I don't
Yeah.
think that is objective here.
Yeah, that doesn't seem objective. If you wanted to make the argument, then make the argument. You should link to an argument for that position. Anyway, so here we have Joe Rogan talking to Stephen Meyer. And it's cool how friendly this is, because these guys are on, have very different positions.
James Webb. James Webb Telescope and James Webb.
Yeah, there's been a lot of media reports suggesting that the findings of the James Webb Telescope have undermined the case for the Big Bang, or the Big Bang Theory. But there's an interesting backstory on this. Most of these media reports were based on the writings of a single physics researcher named Eric Lerner, who's been, since 1990, kind of carrying a torch to refute the Big Bang. And Lerner, in one of his articles, quoted a University of Kansas astrophysicist saying that she stays up late at night wondering if, based on the James Webb, that everything that we know is turning out to be false.
So just in case anyone doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm looking this up right now. James Webb Space Telescope is the largest space telescope made to conduct infrared astronomy. Its high resolution and high sensitivity instruments allow it to view objects too old, distant, or faint for the Hubble Space Telescope. So that was the big one when I was younger. And so now the James Webb Space Telescope is the upgrade. This enables investigations across many fields of astronomy and cosmology, such as observation of the first stars, the formation of the first galaxies, and detailed atmospheric characterization of potentially exoplanets. They're looking for more planets. So you got the telescope. It's bringing in more evidence. And Stephen Meyer's pointing out that a woman said that she lays awake at night wondering if this undermines what they believe. And then a guy who's been since 1990 or so trying to refute the Big Bang Theory took her quotation about this is undermining what we believe, claimed that she's saying it undermines Big Bang Theory when actually she was talking about galaxy formation. So let me back this up a little bit. Guys, just so you know, this is technical because Stephen Meyer is like a really big science nerd. So this is pretty nerdy discussion.
Couldn't find a better way of insulting your listeners.
Yeah, it is. I mean, interesting stuff though. So let's check this out.
University of Kansas astrophysicist saying that she stays up late at night wondering if, based on the James Webb, that everything that we know is turning out to be false. Turns out that researcher, that astrophysicist, disclaimed his use of the quote, explaining that he took it completely out of context. That she was talking about theories of galaxy formation, not about whether or not there had been a Big Bang, and not about whether or not the universe is expanding as we would expect.
So he's confirmation bias.
Yeah, and in a sense also taking somebody way out of context to make a point of his own. You know.
So as far as the Ali Dawah discussion, so here's how this works. These guys for decades say that the Quran predicts the Big Bang, and here it is, and this fits in well with the science of the time. But then someone says the new findings are causing me to doubt our theories of galaxy formation. This gets taken out of context by someone who wants to debunk the Big Bang Theory, and he pretends that it's denying the Big Bang Theory. It's calling into question the Big Bang Theory. Then it gets reported by journalists who don't know a lot about the discussions and so on as the Big Bang Theory is now in doubt. And then Ali Dawah sees this and, we've been using this for years to say that the Quran supports the Big Bang Theory. Now that's in question. We have to throw out the argument. And it turns out Ali Dawah didn't know what he's talking about. It was a quotation out of context.
Stop misrepresenting it, David. The Big Bang has been debunked. Debunked.
So Ali Dawa is wrong about the Big Bang being debunked, but he's right about the scientific miracles argument being debunked.
He misused the quotation
On purpose.
apparently.
Apparently.
So here's
That's interesting because so now everyone knows that guy misused a quotation, ripped something out of context to support his theory. And that will actually get him in trouble with the scientific community, because the next time he tries to say something, they're gonna be like, wait, we remember last time you completely ripped something out of context to deceive people. We don't trust you anymore. But what's crazy is in the Dawa community, that's never a problem. You could do that 1 trillion times in a row and still be the hero of Dawa. You can always rip everything out of context, always deceive people, and you will never once be held to account ever in your entire career.
Mm-hmm.
True or false, AP? True or false?
True, false, yeah.
There have been a number of leading astrophysicists. In fact, people who would like to know more about this, I'd recommend what Brian Keating from University of California, San Diego, great astrophysicist, has been writing about this. But here's the short story. I wrote an op-ed in the Daily Wired distilling some of this stuff. What the James Webb Telescope is able to do is to, in fact, what it was constructed to do was to detect extremely long wavelength radiation, stuff that's outside the visible range. I call it uber redshifted. It's actually in the infrared range is the more accurate physics. Looking for very long wavelength radiation coming from galaxies that are very, very far out there. Now, why would it be looking for that? Well, because if the universe is expanding as we would expect based on the Big Bang theory, then the radiation coming from things very, very far out in space and therefore very far back in time should be very stretched out, more stretched out than stuff that's closer at hand. So the James Webb was constructed in hopes of detecting that type of radiation if it existed. It's not assuming that it necessarily would, but it would be a way of confirming the expansion of the universe has been going on for a very long time. And in order to do that, the NASA people created some amazing technology. They supercooled the detection technology or the detection apparatus to, I think, 5, 6, 7 degrees above absolute zero, so that the heat coming off of the instrument itself was not creating infrared that would interfere. And what they were in.
I was thinking about something you said, so I had to back this up. So anyway, he's pointing out this is actually good science. This is how science is done, especially when you can make predictions based on a theory. So they put this telescope up there suggesting, hey, we need some way of detecting this uber red-shifted light. And if the theory is correct, then we're going to find this when we send a telescope to look for it. And then they sent the telescope to look for it, and it was there. So it's actually decent confirmation for the theory that they were putting out. all the garbage and nonsense we have to deal with all the time, and suddenly we get this like perfectly nice discussion between Joe Rogan and Stephen Meyer, who are both calm, and no one's
able to detect from these very ancient, very distant galaxies was super redshifted radiation, uber redshifted stuff out in the infrared, and we're able, on the basis of that, to synthesize images of these very, very distant remote galaxies.
Interesting. He's saying that based on the infrared, then you've got some light. It's just massively redshifted. And then it sounds like once you adjust it, you can actually put together an image of some ancient galaxies. That's cool stuff, man.
Now, the very fact that they were able to do that confirms that you have that what you would expect on the basis of the Big Bang theory, that the amount of red shift that you would expect to be present if, in fact, the galaxies had been expanding throughout that vast stretch of time was, in fact, present and was detected. Now, that didn't get reported. The whole focus was on the fact that there were galaxies that were more mature, there were more of them early on than we would have expected based on our theories of galaxy formation. And so those are anomalies that need to be addressed and have not yet been explained, as I understand it. Maybe the astrophysicists have made more progress on that in even recent days. But
Did everyone catch that? Because if you're
Nobody-
if you're like me and you're not entirely up to date on cosmology and so on, the Webb Telescope is supposed to. The prediction is we're going to detect this kind of radiation if the Big Bang theory is correct, and that was confirmed. The media didn't discuss that very much because there was something controversial. What happened was some of the evidence conflicted with the theories about galaxy formation and how early galaxies were forming and how many of them were forming and how old galaxies were. And some of the evidence was conflicting with that, which calls that part into question. In other words, it's throwing off the timeline. You have your theory. So there's the Big Bang here, and then there's this, and then you get galaxies and so on. And that's, at this stage. And suddenly the galaxies are not forming when you thought they were forming. They were forming earlier, and there were more of them. And so there's something off with your theory. So that part gets reported, and then a quotation gets taken out of context, and then Zakir Naik's entire career comes crumbling to the ground because Ali Dawa jumped off the crazy train. Tester John here says, David, do you put any stock in intelligent design? Yes, I believe the universe is designed. So I believe there's design in cosmology, physics, chemistry, biology. Yes. So the question is, how are they connected? Like what exactly requires design, and what are the actual examples, and what are the things you don't have a good explanation for by appealing to just purely natural causes and so on. So that's the issue. So it's not something I focus on a ton, but yes, that's one of the reasons I started. Matter of fact, I'll go back. So when I was a little kid, I saw like E.T. and I watched, Star Trek and stuff when I was a little kid. So I believed in aliens for a little while. And then by the time I'm like, I guess middle school it's high school. Once I went through biology and started in chemistry, then I was like, it was like, once you find out how complex DNA is, it's like, I don't believe this is going to happen anywhere else unless you had some completely different kind of life, which we would have no idea how that could happen. I do not believe a single cell is going to form anywhere. You can actually look at it and say, but the universe is so big. If you calculate the improbabilities and so on, it would still, given the entire universe, it's improbable that it would happen. So the idea that, it's just big and it's going to happen. Anyway, so I didn't believe in aliens anymore. And then I eventually was reading a book. So this was 11th grade. And I read a book, Michael Crichton's The Sphere. It was not a terribly good book. I don't even know why I read it. Oh, and I do know why I read it, because I read his book, The Terminal Man, which is good. And then I read The Sphere, which wasn't terribly good. But in The Sphere, it was interesting. I don't remember the details because I was like, 16 or 17. This was a long time ago. So you're talking 30 years ago. But the idea was they find some spacecraft at the bottom of the ocean, and it had been there for centuries. So everyone's saying we found an alien ship, and there's one mathematician there. He's going, it's not an alien ship. And they're all going, what is it? It's obviously an alien ship. It's been at the bottom of the ocean for centuries, and it's a spaceship. And he says, no, it's not. No, it's not. No way, no way, no way. And so they eventually go down there and they open it up, and all the controls are in English. And he just smiles. And he eventually explains his reasoning. And his reasoning was alien life getting here is so radically improbable given all the probabilities. It's much more likely that human beings would invent time travel and come back than it would be that this is alien. So he said, he concluded it's much more probable that that humans traveled through time than that aliens got here. Now, in that story, there was eventually an alien sphere in there. That's why it's called a sphere. But anyway, long story short, so then I was like, oh, this guy's saying the same thing I was thinking. He's just giving some actual, more information. And then eventually it was, no, I don't believe it happened by chance even here. And so that's my position. AP, you have any thoughts on all of that?
I have no idea.
Because I know you're a hostile, angry dude. So you're going to no. Anyone who believes in design is stupid. Anyone who believes in design is a moron. You see, this would destroy science if you believe that. It would destroy science. It's pseudoscience. It says right there on Wikipedia. What's that?
No, well, Wikipedia is the truth. Wikipedia is objectively true. So therefore, if it says pseudoscience on Wikipedia, then that's what I accept. That's what I go with. I'm sorry.
There you have it. There you have it. Okay.
Basic picture of an expanding universe outward from a beginning has not been undermined, but rather confirmed in a very dramatic way at very great distance and for galaxies that are a very far look back time, way back in time. So I think it's a rather dramatic confirmation. There have been many others. The cosmic background radiation that was discovered in 1965, the Kobe radiation that George Smoot discovered in the 90s. So there's been this pattern of confirming evidence of this basic picture of an expanding universe out from the beginning in observational astronomy from the 20s right up till now.
I did want to point out here, Hunter McBucket says, I love how people try to put God within a box of human understanding, but don't realize that God is most likely beyond our comprehension. I brought this up because people keep asking me my views on stuff, but there is an element always in my mind, like, how much do I really understand about this? And do we really know what we're talking about? And how radically different is God that we're thinking of him like we really comprehend or understand God. So,
but that is something that I think about as well when I think about God. I feel like even if I came to the conclusion at some point that there might be a creator or that there might be a God or something, it would be very, I don't know. It wouldn't be my place to decide what kind of a God that is, what God is, where God is, what God actually wants from me, and all of that stuff. But yeah, these are discussions that you can go in very lengthy discussions into.
And there is a tradition of this in various branches of theology. In fact, my doctoral advisor, Brian Davis, is sort of a modern champion of what he calls classical theism and distinguishes from theistic personalism. So the idea is that because we're humans, we think of God as a person like us, whereas God is not a person like. Keep in mind, he's not talking about like persons of the Trinity or something like that. We're talking about that we're just thinking of God as almost like a superhero, like a really powerful person somewhere who could rush in and so on. And it's no, God is what is upholding and sustaining all of reality that is distinct from himself. And so it's kind of, you end up with it's harder to understand. It's very easy to think of God as a person. And I still kind of think of God as a person, but my point is you've got all these different views, and I'm always kind of like, I don't know. That guy's got a point over there, and he disagrees with this guy, but this guy has a point, and this guy disagrees with that guy, and that guy has a point. And unless I just become a master of these topics, I don't know.
That's why I liked Taoism when I was studying the different religions of the East. In Taoism, they have this whole thing that the Tao is the way, the underlying, the origin of everything, the thing that sustains everything. But you can't even call it a thing. There's no way to describe it. It's like the belief in God. Like the Tao is behind everything, but they have this idea of if you can describe it, then it is not the Tao. If you can name it, then it is not the Tao. So there is no way for us to ever perceive the eternal power that is behind everything that everything rests on. And I don't know, that there is some very interesting aspect to that.
Pablo says intelligent design is pseudoscience. This guy Stephen harms the gospel. If it's pseudoscience, then yes, but if he's right, then no, it wouldn't. But if you're a Christian, you shouldn't be worried about people discovering something that's going to hurt you or something like that.
If it's pseudoscience, then it might be wrong. But if it's not pseudoscience, then it might be right or wrong. And if it's pseudoscience and right, then it might not be wrong or pseudoscience. No idea where I'm going with this. No idea what I just said. Let's watch the video.
One more. Tester John says, no conflict between Big Bang and Christianity. Would you ever reconcile your view with Big Bang? I don't have a problem with it. The pioneers of the scientific revolution, they compared the universe to another book. It's if God created the universe, then you have access to that information, and you should go and study it. And that was part of the reason they became so interested in science. They were like, we're in contact with the mind of God with everything we're learning, and so on. And so, I don't know.
I think the only problem that the Big Bang theory would pose to creation and to religious belief would be the question of why so much time has passed between the Big Bang and the emergence of humanity. And that is, of course, a long discussion to have, but I don't think that there is anything fundamentally wrong about the Big Bang theory that is conflicting with religious belief.
Yeah, and you could, I mean, on the one hand, you could say that fits really well with "Let there be light," but doesn't fit with certain other understandings of Genesis. So you could say it would cause a problem for certain views of the Book of Genesis. Anyway, let's go check some of this out.
That, I think, gives us good reason to think best we can tell the universe had a beginning.
Can I pause you on that? What is the when she was discussing the formation of galaxies? What had thrown that into question? Like what was about the formation of galaxies that undermined previous ideas?
I'm going to answer tentatively because I don't know this as well as the other that I just described.
Okay.
But as I understand it, it's that there are more galaxies that formed earlier and are more mature than we would have expected, because they were able to look back to 13.5, 13.6 billion years ago. They think the origin of the universe is about 13.8 billion years ago. So apparently galaxies were forming faster than we would have expected. And I think that's the anomaly that is on the table.
Does that just push the timeline further back, but still come up with the data that points to the idea of a beginning?
I've wondered that. That seems to me a logical possibility. Maybe the origin of the universe was further back, but you're still getting this picture of a collapsing sphere in the reverse direction of time back to a point.
Okay, so that's actually an interesting question for Joe Rogan. If this telescope is calling into question the theory of galaxy formation, and galaxies are actually appearing earlier, and there are more of them, and the galaxies that are being observed are actually older, and it's calling the timeline into question, the question then becomes, so is the Big Bang actually way earlier? So instead of 13.8 billion years or whatever, is it 20 billion or 30 billion or something like that? Or does galaxy formation just happen much more rapidly than you thought, and so you still got the same start date but a different timeline and so on?
But is it possible that with further detection, we can, with new data, have a better understanding of what is actually going on rather than just saying it all points to this thing? Because it seems like there's data, but it's what you're describing seems like it's possible, at least in the future, to have better detection methods.
Yeah, it's always possible that we can change our minds on things because science is always provisional.
Interesting.
Stable theories that have persisted because of a preponderance of evidence that points to and continues to point to the same conclusion.
Yeah, so that's an important point. No, I don't want to keep interrupting him, but that was a very important point, that some theories last a lot longer than others, which get discarded because the more that keeps coming in, the more they keep confirming the theory, and so the theory starts looking better and better and better instead of worse and worse. But he's going to give some examples here.
And I think we've had 100 years now where we've had repeated new types of observations that point towards a beginning. And there are two other classes of two other developments in theoretical physics that also, I think, reinforce this, that I also wrote about in the book. One is the singularity theorems that Hawking and Penrose and George Ellis proved in the 1960s and 70s. And then there's something called the Borde-Guth-Vilenkin theorem, which I think is even a tighter
Craig talks about
physics
that
proof of a beginning. I think that there is a loophole with the Hawking, Penrose, Ellis singularity theorem, although it's I think very suggestive and highly indicative of a beginning. Let me run it just briefly because it's a fun thing to think about. So Hawking is doing black hole physics for his PhD in the 1960s.
Hawking was also in Muhammad's Boom Boom Room, just so everyone knows.
And he's at Cambridge, and he's having these neurological symptoms, and he's diagnosed with ALS. He gets very, very discouraged. He thinks he's going to quit. And he's encouraged to press on, and he does. And he ends up writing this brilliant thesis where he has one chapter where he's thinking about what the cosmologists are talking about, is that we've got this expanding universe, and if the universe is expanding in the forward direction of time, then matter is getting more and more diffuse over time. Now, part of his thesis involves general relativity, Einstein's theory of gravity. And according to Einstein, a massive body actually curves the fabric of space or space-time. So if you're going in the forward direction of time, space is getting less and less curved, and matter more and more diffuse. But if you're going in the reverse direction of time, the matter is getting more and more densely concentrated at every successive point in the finite past until, again, you reach a limiting case where the matter gets so densely concentrated that space gets so tightly curved that it can't get any more tightly curved. It can't get any more densely concentrated. And you move towards a point of infinite density and infinite curvature. You get to a limiting case.
I love limiting cases, like probability and things like that. But I read Brief History of Time in jail, and he said something cool in there. He said people ask him if he can actually visualize 4-dimensional space-time, and he says, I have enough trouble visualizing 3 dimensions, let alone 4 dimensions. But it was an important point because you have people like me who are like I need to picture stuff to really get my mind around it. And so, if you're laying out a theory, cosmological theory like relativity or something like this, like I can't picture it, I can't get my mind around it, and so on. He's saying, well, they can't either. Like the physicists can't either. They don't need to.
Mm-hmm. Now, infinite curvature corresponds to zero spatial volume. And so the picture of the origin of the universe that sort of intuitively flows from this is one where you get not just matter and energy arising, but space and time come into existence at that 0 point. And he presents this in his PhD thesis. The story of this is told really nicely in the little film, the Theory of Everything. And he's fear and trepidation getting examined, but one of his examiner, they're nitpicking all these different things, but then they say, hey, the idea of a black hole at the beginning of the universe, a space-time singularity, this is brilliant, congratulations, Dr. Hawking, and they shove the thesis book back over to him, and he's passed. But one of them says, now go work out the maths. And he ends up working out the math of this intuitive proof that he develops with Sir Roger Penrose, with whom you have done a wonderful interview, and George Ellis, whom I've had the occasion to meet. And so they end up producing several of these singularity theorems, suggesting that if general relativity is true, then there must have been a beginning. This is on grounds independent of all the things from observational astronomy. Now
So this is why he's pointing out that there, it's kind of a sign of a good theory that as more evidence comes in, more different lines of evidence come in, they're going to confirm this theory. And he's pointing out this is like completely different from the completely different confirmation from some of the other lines of confirmation.
And that is that in the very tiniest smidgens of space-time, inside 10 to the minus 43rd of a second, or what they call Planck time, quantum effects might have been such that we would have to alter our ideas of how gravity worked. And so out of that has come something called an impulse are different theories of what are called quantum gravity or quantum cosmology. And I think you've had some conversations on this show about that as well.
Sure.
In my book, I show that that is another possible cosmological model. But like the conclusion that the universe had a definite beginning, I think those models also have theistic implications, and I can explain why.
Okay.
Maybe we bracket that.
Okay.
Then there's yet a third proof, though, of a beginning that by 3 physicists, Bohr, Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin. And it's not based on general relativity. It's not based on ideas of what gravity was like in the early universe. It's a little tricky to explain easily, but basically they show that there is, again, a limiting case and therefore a definite beginning to time, and therefore and that it does not have the same loophole that the singularity theorems of Hawking and Penrose. So what I've said in what I argue in the book is that a body of evidence from observational astronomy, a strong indicator from theoretical physics, namely the singularity theorems of Hawking et al., and then a very compelling proof from Borguth and Vilenkin all point to the same conclusion, that as best we can tell, the universe had a beginning. And I think that's the best we can do in science, but that is a pretty weighty range of testimony supporting the same conclusion.
So multiple different lines of evidence involving very different observations and theories and calculations, he points out, are all pointing in the same direction. So that is interesting.
Read any Terence McKenna?
I haven't.
Terence McKenna had a very funny thing that he said about science. He said, science wants you to believe that it's all about measurement and reason if you allow them one miracle. That one miracle is the Big Bang.
Yes.
That all things come from the most preposterous idea ever.
Yeah.
That everything came from nothing in one big miracle.
That's right. I completely
totally
agree
paraphrased it. He probably said it far more eloquently.
Well, this was.
It's funny. Hume pointed out something. Hume is pre any sort of Big Bang theory or something like that. But he was pointing out just the abandoning the Earth-centered model of the universe. He's saying, we don't understand how insane that sounded back then. The idea that, oh yeah, we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour right now, and we're flying through space. Like, what are you? What do you mean I'm spinning at 1,000 miles an hour right now? That's absolutely insane. He says, but if you accept that, then a lot of other things fall into place all of a sudden. But like that was a big, a really huge step for people because it sounded so insane. And so he's pointing out, Joe Rogan points out, Terence McKenna points out, hey, as long as you grant this miracle at the beginning, then everything, then all your physics and everything works out after that. And I saw G.K. Chesterton make a similar point with the Trinity, saying as long as you're willing to grant that one mystery, then everything else in Christianity falls into place. And so that's life, ladies and gentlemen.
Fred Hoyle's objection to the Big Bang.
He
said he was a Democritean. He didn't believe. He said nothing comes from nothing, and I simply refuse to believe that the physical universe came from nothing physical. And moreover, he said it smacks of the Genesis account, which he detests, and so he rejected the Big Bang and formulated this steady state model that was later, I think, decisively refuted by the discovery of the cosmic background radiation. It happens. I've had funny coincidental meetings with Hoyle, Herman Bondi, and Thomas Gold, all three of the architects of the steady state model. I met Bondi and Hoyle when I was a PhD student in Cambridge. And Hoyle held on to his dying day for the steady state. But Bondi, actually, we had a conversation about it, and he said that it turned out that it was a brilliant idea. It was a beautiful idea. Just that it turned out that everything about it was wrong, and he rejected it. So, but later, Hoyle had his own conversion to a kind of quasi-theistic worldview because of his discovery of the fine-tuning parameters. But the point is that the materialists did not expect to have this evidence from the beginning. Hoyle thought that the laws of physics were the first law of conservation of matter and energy. Matter and energy are neither created nor destroyed except at the Big Bang. And he didn't like that, but eventually I think the physics community came around. There were so many indicators of that beginning event.
All right, well, that was that entire clip. I just looked up this famous quotation from Hoyle because he was pointing out how weird it was. Like Hoyle was, Big Bang, the Big Bang theory of universe exploding sounds too much like creation. I don't like that. But he became a proponent of the fine tuning. And there's this famous quote by him. He says, a common sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics as well as chemistry and biology, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. So it's interesting that, to me, it's interesting that he has a problem with creating everything, but not monkeying with the with the rules of stuff, like some sort of super intellect can monkey with the stuff, but creation's a problem. That's interesting. I don't know. Weird guy.
I mean, it was pretty evident. I feel like I looked up the Big Bang and the current understanding, the current stance, the current different theories and hypotheses on the origin of the universe so many times over the last 5 years, because it came up again and again and again and again in discussions, in stuff that I wanted to include in my video, and when I made a video explaining the cosmogony, the different ideas of how the universe came into existence by old mythologies and all of that. And I think it has been pretty consistent that the Big Bang is the most verifiable, right? The most verifiable, testable conclusion at the moment for many different factors. And there has not been any development over the last years or over the last decades, which is like, okay, this clearly shows that the Big Bang did not happen. No, this clearly shows that the whole Big Bang idea is completely wrong. There must be something else. No, all there is there might be differences in how we understand the Big Bang, and there are some hypotheses which still coexist with the strongest idea, which is the Big Bang. But the whole idea that the Big Bang has been debunked, or that it has been shown to be not true, as Aridawa wants us to believe, that's just complete nonsense, of course.
Yeah, and that's kind of because, you know, it's easy to come up with a theory that you can test in a lab easily and do a bunch of repeated experiments, and then people can perform those experiments around the world, and you can come up with a really good, solid hypothesis that's been confirmed by multiple lines of it. When you're talking about like beginning of the universe and so on, you're getting pretty far away from our ordinary experience and pretty far away from things that, you know, we can just easily go around confirming. So you have to come up with these elaborate ways using mathematics that's only understood by a very few amount of people, or you have to, you know, send things into space, and you have to invent all these lines of equipment. So I'd say the Big Bang Theory is doing remarkably well, given, you know, that, you know, it starts off just because, you know, they find out the universe is expanding, and so you say, okay, well, if I trace that backwards, then it looks like it's going backwards, and it would go to a point, and then so you say, okay, if that's correct, then here are the lines of evidence that, if it's correct, would confirm it. So let's go out and see if the evidence actually confirms it. And they do that in a bunch of different ways, and it tends to stand up pretty well under scrutiny. So as far as scientific theories on really big issues go, that one's doing pretty well. D. Wood, is Darwinian evolution true? I would say
depends on how you define true. What do you mean by true? What do you mean by dark? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's important, because if he had said, is evolution true, then obviously, depending on what you mean, yeah, I mean, natural selection is pretty indisputable. Mutations happen. So you have elements like that. The big picture of completely naturalistic, I can't buy it. It's too, because you can actually calculate probabilities here. And say there are certain things that that is too radically improbable. Just getting life, if you do the math, if you can actually calculate, you need about I think 250 proteins for the simplest imaginable life that would function as a human cell. And so you can calculate the odds of forming a medium length protein by chance, and then so you calculate, okay, I need about 250 of those, and what's the odds? And you wouldn't, but Meyer just talked about sort of limitations on things, like a limiting factor. You can come up with kind of probability limits. In other words, you say, hey, the universe is really, really big, and so weird things can happen in it. But you can actually do the math. You can calculate the number of particles in the universe, about 10 to the 80th power particles in the entire universe. And so you say, okay, well, that's that. And then what about the fastest rate these things could be interacting? Well, you say, okay, the speed of light is the fastest these things could be interacting. And then, well, how much time do you have? Well, you've got the beginning of the universe. And so you've got you can calculate the entire number of seconds since the Big Bang, multiply that times the number of particles in the universe, and then multiply that by saying that, okay, let's assume particles are interacting at the speed of light for the entire history of the universe. That gives you kind of like the most particle interactions you could even theoretically have since the beginning of the universe. And what's amazing is you do the math, you're not close to getting one medium length protein by chance, let alone 250 of them all in one place at one time. So you can have the simplest, the simplest imaginable life that we could form. And so that's what you get when you actually do the math. And so, yeah, I got problems blind. With that said, you can obviously have changes in species and so on. I'm talking about the big picture. Yeah, I would also say this. It's like, so if you believe in something in addition to nature, then that becomes part of it, and that kind of opens up things like, design and so on. If you don't, then Darwinian evolution is kind of the only game in town, right? Because you have to go to how did we get to this sort of complex life, and so you would need a process like that.
Yeah, I want to say to give a serious answer. It's probably one of the fields I never liked biology. I never liked the study of biology. It was always very uninteresting to me, and I could say I don't have the best understanding of it. That said, on the surface, from a very surface level studying, it seems to be an idea that somewhat makes sense. Although, as somebody who doesn't fully understand it, I do have my reservations and my questions about some of the things in belonging that are part of the theory. But I can't make a true or false statement about something that I don't understand. All I think about it is, it seems reasonable. It might be true. I'm open to anything, but it's also not something that I really care about, to be honest.
Then why are you obsessed with it? Ray Rodriguez said, I have a New Living Translation and a New King James Bible. Do you recommend either or another? That's going to come down to you, Ray. So you have the problem with translation. We've talked about this before, but the issue with translation is some things don't translate well. So the example we used in the past was the French have a saying like, I have the cockroach, and it means I'm depressed or something like that. If you translate it literally, it doesn't make any sense because no American would understand. So do you translate it literally and then put a footnote saying, for the French, this means this? Or do you translate it as I'm depressed, which is definitely not a literal translation, but that's what it means and so on. So that's the idea. I prefer sort of literal translations like the ESV or the NASB, but that's me. If you're, the sort of freer you get with the translations, the more careful you have to be. Because people could be, putting their own perspective into things. But yeah, I'd go with what you prefer, and I try to maybe check out both. So read a passage in the New Living Translation, then a New King James, and maybe have a literal translation to back it up. What is that?
So the new NASB is my favorite, my personal favorite, which is my Bible. Yeah.
He's been converted. I can't tell you how much my mind is blown by watching like people just having a friendly conversation and Joe Rogan sitting there knowing inviting a proponent of intelligent design, because notice if he looks this up, intelligent design is a pseudoscience and stuff. And yet he'll still have a discussion with this guy and keep it friendly, even though this guy obviously believes that these things point to God, but still, is happy to have a discussion with the guy. Very, very mature level of emotionality compared to almost everything else that's going on in the world right now, which is no, everyone break up into your groups. Do not interact with any other group unless it's sheer aggression and hostility. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage everyone to check out more clips of Joe Rogan when he's having friendly discussions with interesting people, even people he disagrees with. And I would encourage everyone, whatever your perspective is, to not have Ali Dawa's perspective on science. It's one of the ways we're learning about the universe. And atheist, why would you? I mean, you would obviously want to you should obviously want to learn about the universe. If you're a theist, you should want to learn about what God has done in the universe. All right. Until next time.